Never judge a person by how they look when they walk in, because the kid you humiliate today might just own the building you're standing in. The sky was painted in soft grays and deep blues, the kind of quiet morning that promised something unusual. A slight drizzle tapped gently against the glass walls of Vital Strength Gym, the most elite fitness center in the city. Inside, marble floors gleamed under bright LED lighting. Modern machines stood in perfect rows. Personal trainers in matching black uniforms greeted members with corporate smiles. It was a place reserved for the wealthy, the powerful, and the flawless. No one expected anything less. Certainly not anyone. Like the boy who had just walked in, Malik stepped past the sliding doors with a basketball, tucked under one arm and his backpack hanging from one broken strap. He was 12 years old, with smooth medium brown skin, neatly twisted hair that stopped just above his brows, and eyes full of quiet wonder. His gray hoodie was a little too big, sleeves slightly stretched out, and his dark blue joggers were patched at the knees. The soles of his black hand-read high-top sneakers squeaked faintly as he crossed the floor, drawing the attention of a few heads who turned briefly, then looked away with a hint of disapproval. To them, he was just another kid who didn't belong, but Malik didn't care about glances. His eyes were fixed on the basketball court behind the glass partition, where tall men in compression shorts and sleeveless shirts threw passes and slammed dunks with precision. He didn't know how long he stood there, mesmerized by the rhythm of the game, until a sharp voice cut through the ambient music and shattered his quiet moment. "Hey, you lost, kid." The voice belonged to a tall, broad-shouldered security guard with a buzz cut and a badge clipped to his chest. His tone wasn't friendly. It wasn't even curious. It was filled with annoyance. The kind reserved for someone who thought they were wasting his time. Malik turned and smiled politely. "No, sir. I'm here to play." The guard let out a half laugh, looking Malik up and down. "You think this is a playground?"
You can't just walk into places like this."
"Where's your membership card, huh?" Malik fumbled with his backpack, trying to unzip the main pocket. The zipper stuck, caught on the fraying fabric inside, and the guard took that hesitation as guilt. "I knew it. You don't have one, do you? Thought you could sneak in, mess around, and maybe steal something from the lockers? You kids never learn." People were watching now. A woman in yoga pants stopped on her way to the Pilates room. Two trainers paused mid-chat. Malik's face flushed with embarrassment, but he kept his voice calm. "I'm not stealing anything, I promise. My dad said I could come here today." "Oh yeah, and who's your dad? LeBron James?" The guard mocked, then snatched the backpack off. Malik's shoulder. "Let's take a little walk, superstar." As the boy was marched toward the exit, one of the trainers whispered to another, "I've never seen him here before. He doesn't belong." Outside, the drizzle had turned into steady rain. Malik sat on the concrete bench just beyond the gym doors, clutching his basketball tightly. His backpack sat beside him, wet and sagging. He didn't cry, didn't even flinch, just stared at the parking lot, waiting. Not for a bus, not for a ride, for someone specific. 10 minutes later, the black matte SUV glided into the lot. The sleek vehicle rolled to a smooth stop directly in front of the bench. Rain dotted the hood like tiny jewels as the back door opened with a quiet hiss. Malik stood up slowly, wiping his hands on the front of his hoodie, not out of nervousness, but respect. From the SUV stepped a man whose presence demanded attention. Before he even said a word, he was tall, sharply dressed in a navy blue three-piece suit with a subtle window pane pattern that hugged his athletic frame. His espresso brown skin glowed even under the gray sky, and his low-fade haircut was lined with perfect precision. A gold watch peeked from under his crisp white cuff as he adjusted his burgundy tie. His polished oxblood double monk strap shoes made a soft thud on the pavement as he approached. The man knelt in front of Malik, gently placed a hand on his son's shoulder, and asked, "What happened?" Malik didn't answer right away. His eyes, usually bright with imagination and energy, were clouded. But he didn't cry. Instead, he simply said, "They kicked me out. Said I didn't belong. Said I was trying to steal." His father's jaw tightened. Not with shock, because sadly, This wasn't the first time someone had assumed the worst about his son, but with quiet fury. He stood up, looked toward the gym's tinted glass doors, and without another word, he placed his hand on Malik's back. "Come on," he said. "Let's go remind them who we are." Together, they walked across the wet pavement and toward the automatic doors. Malik kept his eyes forward, his small frame beside the taller, commanding figure of his father. When the glass doors slid open again, the quiet music and scent of eucalyptus and disinfectant met them like a barrier between two worlds. This time, Malik didn't feel like an outsider. He felt like he was walking into a place that owed him something. Front desk attendant Sarah, mid-30s, pale skin, blonde hair pulled into a tight ponytail, froze when she saw them. Her eyes darted from the boy to the suited man, her customer service smile flickering uncertainly. Welcome to Vital Strength. How can I help you today?" The father raised one hand slightly, silencing her without a word. He didn't need to raise his voice. His presence did the speaking. The same security guard from earlier rounded the corner, holding a clipboard, laughing with one of the trainers. When he saw them, the grin disappeared. "You again?" "I thought I told you. You made a mistake," the father said, his voice calm and steady. "A very big one." The security guard squared his shoulders, trying to maintain authority. "Look, sir, if this kid is with you, you need to understand." "Understand what?" The father interrupted. "That your first instinct was to assume the worst. Of a 12-year-old boy, because of the way he looked, that you dragged him out in front of everyone without even asking a question." A small crowd had gathered now. Trainers, members, even the manager had come out of her office. Whispers were growing like vines across the polished floor. "I didn't mean you did exactly what you meant," the father said. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a leather folder. He opened it slowly, revealing documents. The gym's ownership papers. The co-investor certificate. His name. Malik's name. The silence was louder than the music. "This gym," he said, turning to look at everyone now, "is as much his as it is mine. And you threw out an owner's son without even asking his name." The security guard's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. The clipboard he had been holding now felt like a heavy burden in his hand. He lowered it slowly, unsure whether to apologize or run. Behind him, the receptionist took a discreet step back. The gym manager, a short woman in a gray blazer and heels, pushed her way through the crowd. "Mr. King," she said, recognition flashing in her eyes. We didn't know you were coming today. Oh, I deeply apologize for this misunderstanding." Malik's father, Cameron King, turned his eyes to her. "You don't need to know when I'm coming. You need to ensure your staff treats everyone with respect, whether they walk in wearing a suit or sneakers with holes." "Yes, of course," she stammered. "Absolutely. This behavior was unacceptable." Malik stood beside his father, holding his basketball tightly. People in the room were no longer looking at him with suspicion. Now, it was something closer to shame, more curiosity. The boy they had dismissed had become the center of every gaze. Cameron looked around the room, and then directly at the security. "Guard, you will return my son's bag. Apologize to him. And then you can wait for HR upstairs." The guard's face reddened. He moved stiffly to the front desk where the soaked backpack sat. Without looking Malik in the eye, he held it out and muttered, "Sorry." Cameron raised a brow. "Try again." The guard swallowed. "I apologize, young man. I made a mistake. I judged you unfairly." Malik took the bag without a word. He didn't need to respond. His presence, his silence, that was enough. But Malik's silence didn't last long as his father turned to address the crowd again. Malik tugged gently at his sleeve and said, "Can I say something?" The room grew even quieter. Cameron nodded. "Of course, son." Malik stepped forward, basketball in one hand, soaked backpack still dripping in the other. His voice was soft but clear. "I came here because I love basketball. I didn't want special treatment. I just wanted to play. I didn't know I'd be kicked out for how I looked." Several members shifted uncomfortably. One older man in a tracksuit looked away. A young woman in a tank top gave Malik a small, encouraging nod. Malik continued, We built this gym so people could feel strong, safe, like they belong here. But you made me feel small, like I didn't matter. It's not because of what I did, but because you assumed the worst. He turned to the guard, then to Sarah, then to the manager. I hope next time you see a kid like me and think maybe he belongs, because we all deserve to be seen that way. There was silence, and then clapping, soft at first, from one of the trainers, then from a few members. It wasn't thunderous, but it was sincere. Cameron placed his hand on Malik's shoulder again. Let's go home. We've made our point. The next 20 minutes changed the energy of the gym completely. Malik dribbled through defenders, passed with the finesse of a seasoned player, and shot with laser focus. One by one, the men on the court stopped underestimating him and started guarding him like an equal. Malik didn't back down. Every time he moved, confidence radiated through his form, not cockiness, but earned pride. Outside the court, members who had once turned their heads now watched with admiration. One woman whispered to another, "Is that really the owners?" Kid the other nodded, eyes still locked on Malik's smooth crossover. Cameron watched from behind the glass, arms folded. His expression was unreadable, but the gleam in his eye said everything. Malik wasn't just playing a game. He was reclaiming his place, his right, his space. The gym manager, now nervously shadowing Cameron, cleared her throat. "Mr. King, I just want to say again how truly sorry I am." "I had no idea. You don't need to keep apologizing," Cameron replied, eyes still on his son. "You need to change the culture here. Start with your hiring. Train your staff better, or I'll do it myself." "Yes, sir." "Understood." Cameron finally turned to her. "Take his name off that visitor log. He's not a guest. He's an owner. Treat him like one." "Yes, sir." Malik's gaze drifted around the gym floor. The atmosphere was different now, quieter, more tentative. Trainers who had once whispered or scoffed were now making nervous attempts at politeness, nodding awkwardly in Malik's direction, as if unsure whether to pretend nothing had happened or offer apologies too. The polished surface of the basketball court beckoned from behind the glass. The same court he'd been so desperate to step onto just an hour ago. Cameron gave his son a small nudge. "Go on," he said softly. "It's yours." The boy blinked. "I can really play now." "You could have played the moment you walked in," Cameron replied. "Now they know that too." As Malik slowly made his way toward the court, his sneakers squeaking with each step, the air seemed to stretch around him. This time, no one moved to stop him. A few members paused their workouts to glance up. The two trainers who'd snickered earlier now watched with folded arms, silent. Even the receptionist stood still, tending to organize papers but stealing glances every few seconds. When Malik stepped onto the hardwood, he dribbled once then again and then fired a shot from the top of the key. The ball arched in a perfect curve, spun slightly, and dropped clean through the net with a satisfying swish. No rim, no backboard, just precision. A soft murmur of impressed reactions echoed through the gym. Someone clapped. A member on the treadmill. Then another. Joined. Soon, the scattered applause grew just enough to feel real, not overwhelming, but honest. The gym manager approached Cameron again, a clipboard in hand and a hesitant smile on her face. "King, if you don't mind, I'd like to schedule an emergency staff meeting today. We'll review conduct protocols, especially regarding our younger members." Cameron nodded but didn't smile. "You'll also send a letter to every employee. Mandatory reading. I'll draft it. This gym bears our name now. That means it reflects our values." "Yes, sir," she said quickly. He looked through the glass wall at Malik, who was now mid-game with two of the younger trainers who had asked to join him, smiling cautiously. They didn't ask about ownership. They just wanted to play. "I built this place so my son would never feel like a stranger in spaces he helped create," Cameron added, his tone gentler now. "Today proved we've still got work to do." "Yes." "Mr. King, I understand." He gave a short nod, then walked toward one of the plush lounge chairs beside the court. Sat down, and finally let himself breathe. Not because the storm had passed, but because his son had faced it with his chin up and his spirit intact. Malik looked back toward his father for just a second. Cameron gave him a thumbs dash up. Malik Grindon drove toward the basket. Malik continued to run drills with the trainers. Something shifted in the energy of the gym. Where there had once been silence, now there was a low hum of conversation. It's not just idle gossip or speculation, but reflection. People who had been there earlier were replaying what they had seen. A 12-year-old black boy being pushed out. Humiliated, accused only for them to find out minutes later he was a coner. That image clung to them. It made them uncomfortable, and it should have. The former security guard, Mark, now stood awkwardly near the front doors, arms crossed. Lips tight, his confidence shattered. He hadn't been fired yet. Cameron hadn't even looked at him again since walking in. But Mark knew something had fundamentally changed. He was no longer the one in charge of keeping the place in line. He was now the example of everything out of line. A few feet away, the yoga instructor who had sneered earlier approached Cameron with a cup of green tea in hand. "Mr. King, I just wanted to say, I think what you and your son are doing here is really powerful. It's inspiring to see a father set an example like that." Cameron accepted the tea with a polite nod. "Inspiration doesn't erase ignorance," he said plainly, "but accountability might." The woman blinked, murmured something about being late for a session, and slipped away. Meanwhile, Malik had gathered a small crowd, not because he asked for it, but because there was something captivating about watching him play. Not just his form or skill, though both were sharp, but the joy in it. The pure, unshakable sense of belonging. Each shot he took reminded the room this space was his, and the fact that anyone questioned it said more about them than about him. At one point, a young boy, maybe 9 or 10, approached the court timidly. He was wearing oversized gym shorts, a little pale, his arms skinny, clutched a basketball. To his chest, "Hey, do you mind if I shoot around too?" Malik stopped, smiled, and tossed him the ball. "Sure, let's go." The younger boy's eyes lit up. He ran onto the court, and just like that, the tension in the air thinned. It was simple. It was pure. It was how it should have been from the start. Back at the reception desk, the manager had gathered the entire front staff. Some looked ashamed. Others were just confused. Odd. But she laid it out plainly. "From now on, we will treat every person who walks through those doors with dignity, regardless of age, skin color, or clothing. Got it? I don't care if it's a billionaire's son or someone off the street. No more assumptions." She turned toward Mark. "You'll pack your things by end of day." He didn't argue. Cameron, seated quietly beside the court, glanced toward the big window, rain still tapping against the glass. He thought about the years he'd worked to build this gym, about the nights he stayed up designing its brand, about the lawyers and contracts and investors and doubt, all of it, so that one day his son wouldn't have to fight to be seen. And yet, here they were. But Malik wasn't broken by it. If anything, he was blooming. The rain outside had begun to ease its gentle tapping, giving way to the soft hiss of wet pavement and dripping leaves. Inside the gym, Malik sat for a moment on the sidelines, a towel around his neck, sweat on his forehead, but his heart full. He looked older now, not in age, but in presence. The kind of growth that doesn't show on a birth certificate, but in the way a person holds themselves after facing something hard and rising from it. One of the younger trainers, Dantaline, tall guy in his 20s with dreadlocks tied into a bun, sat beside him. "Hey," he said quietly. "You good?" Malik nodded. "Better now." Dante offered a fist bump. "For what it's worth, if I had known you were the boss's son, I would have said something earlier." Malik didn't respond at first. Then he said, "You shouldn't have to know that to treat someone with respect." Dante looked down, took the hit with grace. "You're right." Meanwhile, Cameron stood near the front entrance, phone in hand. A local journalist had gotten wind of the event, someone who knew the Kings personally. They weren't interested in exploiting the incident, but in highlighting the moment as a lesson in assumptions, is power and grace. "No interviews yet," Cameron said firmly over the phone. "This is Malik's story, not a PR stunt. If he ever wants to share it, that'll be his choice." He hung up and walked back toward the court. As he passed the rows of machines and mirrored walls, Caught fragments of conversations, staff members rethinking their behaviors, as gym-goers sharing how moved they were, parents whispering that they needed to talk to their kids about what happened. Change wasn't sweeping in all at once, but it had begun. Cameron reached the court again just in time to see Malik pass the ball to the small boy from earlier, now beaming with sweat and joy. The kid made a sloppy shot that somehow bounced off the backboard and went in. He raised his arms like he'd just won the NBA Finals. Malik laughed and clapped. "You're getting better already." "I'm going to play here every day," the kid shouted. "You're always welcome," Cameron said from the sideline. The boy looked at him. Wide-eyed. "You the coach?" Cameron smiled. "Something like that." By now, the clock above the gym floor read nearly noon. The usual lunchtime crowd had started arriving. Among them, a few faces who hadn't seen the morning's events began whispering. Two others, hearing second-hand accounts that sounded almost like myths. A security guard kicked out a black kid. Turns out the kid owns the place. Chaos followed. Justice was served. By now, the clock above the gym floor read nearly noon. The usual lunchtime crowd had started arriving. Among them, a few faces who hadn't seen the morning's events began whispering to others, hearing second-hand accounts that sounded almost like myths. A security guard kicked out a black kid. Turns out the kid owns the place. Chaos followed. Justice was served, but for Malik. This wasn't just a morning that made headlines. It was the morning he realized his name wasn't just on paperwork, was written on every inch of that building. He had a right to be there. Not because he was rich or because his dad built it, but because he belonged. Because every child, every person, should feel safe walking into a space meant for growth, health, and community. He dribbled again, faster now, pivoted, jumped, released. Swish, Cameron watched and whispered under his breath, "That's my boy." The buzz in the gym hadn't faded, it had transformed. From murmurs of curiosity to a hum of respect, people no longer looked at Malik with puzzled expressions or skeptical eyes. Instead, they nodded as he passed, some offering smiles, others giving space. All of them aware that they were witnessing something rare, the quiet rise of a young black boy who had already rewritten the rules before most kids his age had even been handed the playbook. The gym's general manager, a soft-spoken middle-aged woman named Brenda, with ash-blonde hair and rectangular glasses, stepped into the court area. Holding a sleek clipboard, she had been silent during the confrontation, watching from the observation room above, but not out of cowardice. She had wanted to see how it unfolded, and now her role was clear. She approached Malik and knelt beside him during a water break. "Mr. Malik," she said gently, using his name with purpose, "I wanted to say something." Malik raised an eyebrow, wiping his face with a towel. "You didn't deserve what happened, and I didn't step in when I should have. For that, I'm sorry." He didn't speak right away, but he nodded. Brenda reached into her clipboard folder and pulled out a printed sheet. It was a revised training protocol, highlighted in bold red ink, were new anti-discrimination guidelines. Mandatory equity training sessions for all staff, and a clause titled Malik's Standard. "I don't want your name to just be on the building," she said. "I want it to mean something every time someone walks through those doors." Malik took the sheet. His eyes scanned it. Then he looked up, put it on the wall. In the lobby. With the quote, Brenda smiled. "Already in the works." Elsewhere, the security guard Marcus sat in the HR office, his posture deflated. He had been placed on leave pending a formal review, but the guilt had arrived faster than the consequences. He had replayed the moment 100 times already. The way he shoved Malik's shoulder, the dismissive tone, the disbelief when the boy returned. He hadn't meant to make it about race. He hadn't even realized it at the time. But now he couldn't unsee it. The HR director handed him a small envelope. "You're suspended for now," she said. "But you're also being enrolled in our restorative justice program. You can choose not to participate, but if you want to stay here, you'll have to face Malik and his father, not as a guard. A man." Marcus took the envelope, said nothing, but inside something shifted. Back on the court, Malik now sat beside his father on the bleachers. The two watched the crowd move through the gym like a living organism, healthier, wiser, more awake. Malik leaned into his dad's shoulder. "Think it's really over?" he asked. Cameron chuckled. "No, but the beginning part, that's done." Both looked up at the massive glass windows at the gym's front, where the sunlight was breaking fully through the clouds for the first time that day. "Ready for lunch?" Cameron asked. Malik grinned. "Only if I can eat as a Coner." Cameron stood and ruffled his son's hair. "You earned that title today. Let's go feed the boss." As they walked toward the exit, people moved aside, not out of fear, but out of acknowledgement. Some patted Malik on the shoulder. One woman whispered, "Thank you." Another man gave a quiet nod, and just before they reached the front doors, Malik turned around one last time. He looked at the space, the court, the staff, the kids still playing. Then he smiled. "This place feels different now," he said. "It is," his father replied, "because you are." 3 weeks had passed since that unforgettable morning in the gym, and Malik's world had changed, but not in the way most people expected. There were no grand interviews, no viral videos, no dramatic court cases. Malik didn't want his life to become a spectacle. What he wanted was far more powerful: quiet respect, real change, and a future where kids like him didn't have to prove their worth to be treated like they belonged. But behind the calm surface of that gym, ripples of that day were still moving outward, touching people, shifting policies, and planting new seeds in the community. It began with the open court Saturdays. Cameron and Malik had decided that every Saturday morning, the gym would open its main court and equipment for free to kids from underfunded neighborhoods. No forms, no waivers, no questions. Just basketballs, treadmills, punching bags, and space to breathe. Word spread fast. The first weekend, 20 kids showed up. The second, over 60. And by the third, the parking lot was packed with minivans, bicycles, and old cars filled with wide-eyed children and grateful parents. Malik stood by the court entrance each week, high-fiving kids as they ran in. He wore his usual black hoodie, now with the gym's logo embroidered over the chest, sneakers that had seen better days but still hit the floor with purpose. His confidence didn't come from titles anymore. It came from impact, but not everyone embraced the change. Some longtime gym members, particularly those who were used to things being quieter, cleaner, and less diverse, started to complain. They didn't say it outright, but their tone carried it all the same. "This place is getting too loud. Too many people just hanging around. I liked it better before." One woman, Mrs. Larkin, a slender, pale-skinned Pilates instructor in her late 50s with tightly pulled silver hair and a sharp voice that could cut glass, finally voiced what others whispered. She stormed into Brenda's office one Monday morning, heels clicking like gunshots. "This gym is becoming chaotic. My clients are uncomfortable. We need to reconsider these." "Free for all Saturdays?" Brenda, calm and composed, replied without blinking. "You mean the program that's given over 100 kids access to fitness, mentorship, and safety?" Mrs. Larkin's lips thinned. "It's not our job to raise the city's children," Brenda said, her voice steady. "But it is our job to make this gym a place where everyone belongs. You're free to cancel your membership if you disagree." Word got out. Some members left, but many more stayed. In fact, new ones joined, drawn not just to the equipment, but to the spirit of the place. A gym where kindness had a weight heavier. Then iron and inclusion ran deeper than the pool in the back. One afternoon, Malik found himself sitting beside Marcus, the former security guard outside the smoothie bar. Marcus had gone through the entire restorative justice program, and now he was back not as security, but as a mentor. His job? Running a program called Walk-ins Welcome, where he trained new staff on bias awareness and respect-first protocols. They sat in silence for a while, sipping mango smoothies. "I still think about that day," Marcus admitted. "So do I," Malik replied, eyes forward. "You didn't have to let me come back." Malik shrugged. "You didn't have to grow either." Marcus nodded slowly. "This place had it taught me something I didn't even know I needed to learn." Malik looked over at him. "Then maybe that means it's working." Golden light pouring in through the gym's tall windows and bouncing off the hardwood floors. The buzz of voices, the squeak of sneakers, the rhythmic beat of a punching bag being worked in the far corner, everything pulsed with life. Malik stood at the far end of the court, clipboard in hand, watching the kids finish up their drills. Coach Tyson, a burly, bearded former college player with a booming voice and the gentlest heart, blew the final whistle of the day. "All right, everybody, hustle up, bring it in." The kids gathered, sweaty and breathless, forming a tight circle. Malik smiled as they bumped shoulders and teased each other. These were not just gym kids anymore. These were his kids. He knew most of their names now. Deshaun couldn't hit a free throw to save his life, but helped every kid tie their shoes. Amira, who never missed a layup and wore a pink headband like a crown. Jamal, small for his age, fast as lightning, always grinning despite the bruises life had given him. Tyson turned to Malik. "Want to say a few words?" Malik froze for a second. He still wasn't used to that, the center of attention thing. But he nodded. He stepped forward. All eyes turned to him. "I know some of you had to travel far to get here," he began, voice quiet but clear.
Damn.
"Some of you had to talk your parents into letting you come. Some of you probably didn't even want to show up at all. But you did. You showed up. A pause. And that matters. Every time you walk through those doors, you remind this city that you belong in places like this. Not because someone gave you permission, but because it's yours too. This is your court, your track, your weight bench. And no one's going to make you feel otherwise, not while I'm around." Silence. Then someone clapped. Then everyone did. Malik stepped back, flushed but proud. He didn't realize Brenda had been watching from the upper walkway. She smiled and turned to Cameron, who stood beside her. "He's getting good at that," she said. Cameron grinned. "Better than I ever was." "You were never bad," Brenda said with a smirk. "No," Cameron said. "But I was never him." That night, after the kids left and the lights were dimmed, Malik stayed behind. He walked the gym slowly, room by room. He stopped at the smoothie bar, the front desk, the yoga studio, even the little lost and found box tucked behind the staircase. Every corner had meaning now. He made it to the staff hallway, where a new framed poster had been hung. It showed Malik mid-jump, ball in hand, framed against the rising sun coming through the gym's front glass. The caption beneath read, "Built by legacy, owned by heart." Malik stared at it for a long moment. Then he walked into his father's office, sat at the desk, and opened the notebook they used for planning. He scribbled on the first clean page, "Phase 2, expansion. East side, more courts, bigger purpose." Maliki closed the notebook and leaned back in the chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. This was only the beginning. Malik didn't sleep much that night. His mind raced with plans bigger than gym schedules and court rotations. He had ideas that didn't fit neatly into bullet points. They pulsed through him like music, unfinished but alive. He found himself pacing his room well past midnight, hoodie on, socks sliding on the polished wood floors, scribbling words onto sticky notes, whiteboards, even the back of receipts. It wasn't about building another gym, it was about building access. The next morning, he brought it all to Cameron. They sat at the small conference table in the office, sunlight pouring in through the blinds. Malik laid out maps, charts, and messy handwriting with circles around schools, bus stops, and neighborhoods that didn't even have playgrounds, let alone fitness centers. "This," Malik said, pointing to a pin on the map, "is where Deshaun lives. It takes him 2 buses and 45 minutes to get here. One way." Cameron leaned in, brow furrowed. "That far?" "Yeah, and he still shows up. Every Saturday." Cameron nodded slowly, looking at the map again. "So what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we go to them. Up courts, mobile training units. Maybe even an app with home workouts tailored to kids who don't have gear. We could call it," he hesitated, "ground level." Cameron's eyes widened. That's actually good." "I know," Malik said, a little surprised at his own boldness. "And we can get local trainers involved. Tyson's already on board. Brenda said she'd help organize. If we do this right, we're not just changing how kids see fitness wear, changing how they see themselves. Cameron was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. Not the big, proud father smile Malik was used to, but something deeper. Respect. Real, honest respect. As if in that moment, he wasn't just seeing Malik as his son anymore. He was seeing him as a partner. "Let's do it," Cameron said. That one sentence sent the next avalanche into motion. They began with a small Vannon old delivery vehicle, retrofitted with foldable rims, cones, mats, and basic equipment. They spray-painted it matte black and across the side. Malik designed the logo himself, ground level in bold red letters, with a tagline underneath, "No gatekeepers, just game." The first test run was in Eastwood Heights, a neighborhood, long forgotten by city investments, where the cracked sidewalks bore more graffiti than trees, and the nearest sports facility was 30 blocks away. Word spread through text chains, social media, and one passionate middle school counselor named Ms. Kelly. On launch day, they arrived just after noon. The sun was high, and the empty lot where they planned to set up was already surrounded by curious faces, kids, teens, even a few tired-looking adults leaning against rusted fences. Malik hopped out of the van first. Was taller now, or maybe. It was just the way he stood. He pulled open the back doors and started unloading. Cones, jump ropes, water jugs, resistance bands. Tyson followed, barking orders playfully at the kids. "Let's go! Let's go! If you can play video games for hours, you can do squats for 10 minutes. Malik laughed as the kids responded with groans and giggles. They set up quickly, using the faded blacktop as a court and the van as their HQ. Within 20 minutes, music was playing from a speaker. Kids were doing layup drills. And one elderly man was sitting in a lawn chair, nodding in rhythm. That first day, they trained 37 kids. By the third weekend, over 100 showed up, and Malik. He was in the thick of it, not as a figurehead or guest of honor, but as a leader, a teacher, a brother to every single kid who looked at him and saw a future they didn't know was possible. Ground level had only just begun. 3 months into the ground level project, Malik found himself invited to the city's Youth Development Council meeting. It wasn't the kind of invitation people like him usually got, at least, not at 12. But the work spoke for itself. City council members had begun receiving reports from school principals, community organizers, and even local law enforcement. Incidents of youth vandalism in certain areas had dropped. School attendance was up. A handful of teens even stopped skipping class on Fridays because they wanted to be fresh for Saturday drills with Malik and his crew. When Malik entered the council hall that day, flanked by Cameron and Ms. Kelly, it was clear he wasn't just another guest speaker. He was a living rebuttal to every excuse the city had used for years to avoid investing in youth. They won't show up. They won't stay focused. They don't want leadership. Malik was the leadership. Dressed in a charcoal gray hoodie with the red ground level logo printed across the chest, dark jeans, and his favorite worn sneakers, Malik stepped up to the podium. The hall was quiet. Council members looked at him with practiced neutrality. Some leaned forward. Others leaned back, skeptical. He unfolded a single sheet of paper. "I used to think owning something meant signing a paper or having your name on the door," he began. "But now I know owning something means showing up. It means listening to the people who've been ignored. It means building spaces that welcome everybody, not just the ones who can afford the monthly fee." He paused, letting the words breathe. Ground level started with a van and an idea. No permits, no fancy grants. Just a team who believed that kids shouldn't have to earn the right to be safe, or strong, or proud. The silence in the room was thick, but not hostile. Thoughtful, he continued. "We've reached over 800 kids in 3 months, not because we handed out flyers, but because we showed up where they already were. Parking lots, apartment courtyards, back alleys turned half-courts. But we turned concrete into courage." One council member, an older white woman with silver hair and large round glasses, leaned forward. "And what are you asking for, young man?" Malik looked at her calmly. "Just one lot, any neighborhood you've neglected. Give us the land and we'll build the court." The room stirred. Another council member whispered something to the mayor's aide. Ms. Kelly raised her eyebrows in surprise. Cameron just sat still, arms crossed, but you could see the pride in the tightness of his jaw. The silver-haired councilwoman spoke again. "You have a proposal?" Malik nodded and pulled a folder from his backpack. With a projected budget, community impact analysis, and 3 letters of support, including one from Eastwood Heights Precinct Captain. That stirred a louder reaction. By the end of the meeting, they hadn't promised him land, but they had promised a vote. For the first time in the city's recent memory, a 12-year-old boy once shoved out of a gym he technically owned was now the center of a policy conversation. It's about reclaiming space for those who had never been invited, and this was only the beginning. The morning of the council, vote arrived like a drum, rolls slow and steady, each hour carrying more tension than the last. Malik barely slept. He sat in his room, headphones on but no music playing, staring at the ceiling as the early sun streamed through the blinds. Downstairs, Brenda and Cameron were already dressed. Brenda was pacing the kitchen, in a navy blue suit, muttering to herself and sipping lukewarm tea. Cameron sat silently at the table, tapping his pen against a notepad, eyes unfocused. They didn't say much when Malik finally came down. He was dressed clean in simple black sneakers, slate gray jeans, and the same ground-level hoodie. But on his chest now, pinned carefully where the red logo curved over his heart, was the small silver badge his father had given him after opening the gym. It wasn't flashy, just a name, Malik King. Beneath it, one word, founder. At the council chambers, news crews lined the sidewalk. Community leaders, activists, gym members, and parents, many of whom had never attended a city meeting before, showed up in force. Ground-level t-shirts filled the gallery, a sea of red and black. Even kids from the weekend programs were there, some holding handmade signs that read "Courts, not cages," and "Let us play." Inside, the mayor took her seat. The chamber was packed. Malik sat between Brenda and Cameron in the front row, his back straight, face still. The council clerk read the agenda. Then came the proposal. Councilmember Ortega, formerly skeptical, spoke first. She recounted her visit to a recent Eastwood Heights pop-up. "I watched a boy, maybe 9 years old, make 10 free throws in a row. But what impressed me more was when he ran to help another kid who fell. No trash talk, no ego, just care. That's the culture this team is building." Then came the vote. One by one, names were called. Yes. 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 A pause. No. Another pause. Yes. Then Madam Mayor. All eyes turned to her. She smiled and nodded. Yes. The chamber erupted. Cheers filled the air. Brenda covered her mouth, eyes wet. Cameron reached over and squeezed Malik's shoulder, and Maliki just smiled, quietly, deeply. Like the kind of smile that came not from joy alone, but from the kind of hard-earned peace only a few ever got to feel. By the next month, the city deeded a long-abandoned plot in Eastwood Heights. To ground level, bulldozers cleared broken fences, volunteers painted murals. A local carpenter built benches by hand. And when the ribbon-cutting day came, it wasn't just a ceremony, it was a declaration. Kids lined up outside the new court, dressed in matching red jerseys that read "GLC We Rise Together" across the back. As Malik stepped up with scissors in hand, the crowd chanted his name, not like a celebrity, but like someone they knew, someone they trusted, someone who had turned being kicked out of a gym into building, a whole new one for everyone else. He cut the ribbon, and just like that, the court was theirs. By the time the first full season of Ground Level's new Eastwood Heights court rolled in, something remarkable had begun to unfold, not just among the kids, but in the entire neighborhood. What was once dismissed as a trouble zone had become a nucleus of energy and potential. Crime rates dropped further. Local businesses started reopening on the same block that used to empty out after sunset. And every Saturday morning, the court lit up with the sound of squeaking sneakers, laughter, bouncing balls, and that unmistakable rhythm of hope beating back years of silence. But growth brought challenges. Bigger crowds meant more responsibilities. Malik, though just 13 now, found his time stretched thinner each week. Media started reaching out more aggressively. Documentaries were pitched. Offers came in from corporate sponsors, some genuine, some looking for publicity. Cameron handled most of the noise. But Malik was growing more aware of how quickly things could be taken from him if he wasn't careful. One afternoon, he sat at the edge of the court, watching two girls, maybe 10 or 11, run drills they'd learned from him last month. Their footwork was sharp, their passes cleaner. They wore matching ground-level headbands and called out each other's names like sisters. Malik smiled. But then his attention shifted to a conversation happening just beyond the fence. It's too sharply. Dressed men were talking to Cameron. One of them, holding a leather portfolio, pointed at the court repeatedly, nodding with forced charm. The other glanced at Malik. That's when the same chill that once hit him during his very first confrontation with the gym security guard returned. Later that evening, Malik asked Cameron about them. Developers, Cameron said bluntly. Want to partner? Which usually means they want to rename it, brand it, and push you to the side, even though it's ours, especially because it's yours. Malik stared out the window. The idea that something he built with sweat, with conviction, with kids' laughter etched into every concrete groove could be bought or twisted into something unrecognizable. It made his stomach turn. They can't have it, he said. Cameron nodded. They won't. Not while I'm breathing. But it was more than words now. Malik realized the next phase of leadership wasn't about drills or speeches. It was about ownership, not just physical, but legal, protected, defined. That weekend, Brenda sat him down with a notary and a lawyer who specialized in community land trusts. For the first time, Malik reviewed zoning documents, tax forms, bylaws. It was slow, boring, complicated, but he stuck with it, because now he understood. If they wanted to keep ground level safe, it had to be more than a story. It had to be a fortress, not of walls, but of paperwork. Every kid who stepped on that court had to be shielded not just from ridicule, but from erasure. By the end of that month, Ground Level Community Foundation was officially formed, registered, protected. The land wasn't just his, it belonged to a trust. With a charter that required any future leaders to come from the community it served. And Malik? He was listed as its founding director. He wasn't just playing the long game anymore, he was building it. The following spring brought winds of change, literal and symbolic. Cherry blossoms bloomed across the city, and with them came new faces to Ground Level. Teachers from different districts started visiting the court with entire classes, treating it not just as a gym, but as a case study in student-led transformation. College athletes who once dismissed Eastwood Heights as dangerous now came to volunteer. Some ran workshops, others mentored. And through it all, Malik remained the quiet gravity pulling everyone together. But with greater visibility came greater scrutiny. One cloudy afternoon, a city official arrived unannounced at the Eastwood Heights court. Her name was Ms. Laurel Jensina, woman in her 50s, white blonde bob, smart gray slacks, and horn-rimmed glasses. She introduced herself politely, clipboard in hand, and asked to speak with Malik. Nice court, she said. But we're reviewing recreational zoning violations in this district? Just a formality. Malik narrowed his eyes. Violations? Just checking boundaries permits. You understand? Cameron appeared at Malik's side in seconds. This court was approved unanimously by City Council. It's part of a land trust. Jensen raised an eyebrow. Things change. Leadership changes. Zoning can be rescinded. We've had complaints. Malik's stomach tightened. From who? She smiled in that distant, bureaucratic way. Don't disclose complainants, Mr. King. That night, Malik barely touched his dinner. He sat on the back steps of their home, hoodie pulled over his head, legs bouncing. He wasn't afraid, but he was furious. He had seen this kind of pressure before. It was softer now, less obvious than being shoved out of a gym butt it came. From the same place? Disbelief that someone like him could build something so strong without strings attached? Brenda joined him, sitting without a word. After a moment, she handed him a folder. Inside were legal documents, proof that their trust met every requirement. There was even a letter of support from the mayor. "She won't win," Brenda said softly, "but you should know when you build something for the people. Some folks will always try to take it." Malik looked at the papers, then up at the sky, "And we'll just keep building." And they did. Within weeks, the community rallied. Parents wrote letters, local papers picked up the story. Students from across the city recorded videos under the hashtag #HandsOffGroundLevel. Even the original Jim Dewan Malik had been kicked out of posted a statement in support of the Eastwood Heights court, admitting their past mistakes and pledging to match any donation raised that spring. When Jensen returned for a follow-up inspection, she was met not by silence, but by 100 children in red jerseys doing drills. Coordinated chants echoing across the court, Malik approached her calmly, a folder in one hand, a basketball in the other. "Still got questions?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, Mr. King. Everything's in order." And with that, she left. Summer came like a sunrise. Long days soaked in golden light, kids arriving before 8 a.m., too eager to wait for the court to open. The chain link fence became a message board covered in chalk art, handwritten quotes, and sign posters. The court wasn't just a sports hub anymore. It was a sanctuary, a classroom, and a second home. Malik, now 13 and a half, had grown taller, his voice deeper. But his presence still carried that same quiet fire. That season, Ground Level hosted its first citywide youth tournament, the Legacy Games. Teams from every borough entered. The Eastwood Heights court, once nearly condemned, now became the main stage. It was a celebration of resilience, of the kids, and of everything the Kings had built. Banners with Malik's initials flanked the scoreboard. Porters milled around the sidelines, but they weren't the center. The kids were. On the final day of the tournament, Malik stood at center court as the last two teams tied at 68 points. 10 seconds left. Crowd roared from the bleachers, parents, grandparents, college scouts, business owners who had once locked their doors by 6 p.m., now cheering under string lights and food trucks. Then a hush fell. The ball was passed. A boy from the opposing team, a kid from the same neighborhood Malik had been kicked out of 2 years ago, took the final shot. It missed. But before the ball hit the ground, another player, a short, lightning-fast kid in a red jersey from Malik's team, grabbed it midair, flipped, and scored as the buzzer rang. The court exploded. Kids rushed the floor. Confetti cannons popped. But Malik didn't move toward the celebration. He moved toward the boy who missed the shot. The boy looked down, shoulders slumped, eyes glassy. He expected judgment, maybe pity. Instead, Malik held out his hand and said, "You played like a beast." That was brave. The boy looked up, stunned, then smiled and shook Malik's hand. It was a moment caught on camera, but more importantly caught in hearts. Because Ground Level wasn't about winning. It was about lifting in the weeks that followed. Applications to the Ground Level mentorship program tripled. Nearby schools changed gym curricula to reflect the model Malik had developed. Even national organizations started reaching out, not just to fund, but to learn. And as all this unfolded, Malik remained grounded. He still showed up at 7 a.m. every weekend still. Swept the court when no one was watching. Still made time to sit beside a lonely kid on the sidelines and ask, "What's going on?" Because that's who he was. Not just a founder, not just an owner, a builder of people. Late one evening, after the court lights dimmed and most of the kids had gone home, Malik stayed behind, sitting on the bleachers under the soft flicker of the overhead lamps, his red hoodie draped over his shoulders, one sneaker resting on the bench, a basketball spinning slowly under his palm. The court was quiet, but alive with echoes of laughter, sneakers squeaking, and voices still etched into the night air. It had become more than just wood and paint. It had become a living story, and he was its heartbeat. Brenda walked out with 2 paper cups of hot cocoa, handing one to her son before sitting beside him. "You tired?" she asked. "Not really," he replied, staring up at the stars peeking through the clouds. "Just thinking." "About what?" Malik paused. about what comes next. Act. Brenda smiled, brushing a bit of lint off his sleeve. What do you want to come next? I want to build something bigger. Not just here, but in other places too. Kids like me. You shouldn't have to fight so hard to be seen. Brenda's eyes shimmered in the dim light. You've already done more than most people do in a lifetime. But it's not enough, he said. I don't want ground level to be a miracle. I want it to be a blueprint. Brenda nodded, understanding. Then you'll need help. And help came, that fall. Malik and his parents launched the Ground Level Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to building safe, youth-led community courts in underfunded neighborhoods. Architects volunteered time, athletes donated gear. Even former critics came forward, offering grants and apologies in the months that followed. 3 new ground-level courts opened in Baltimore, Detroit, and Oakland, each with the same DNA, designed by youth, run by community, protected by purpose. Malik traveled to each site, not as a celebrity or spokesperson, but as a peer. He listened, took notes, played pickup, met every kid with the same question. What? Do you want this court to feel like cozy new F? You don't ask kids what they need? They'll spend their lives trying to survive what adults decide for them. At the original Eastwood Heights location, a mural was painted across the back wall. It showed Malik at age 12, standing with his backpack and basketball, his silhouette framed by a rising sun. Above it, in bold letters, "This court is ours." Yeah. And even as his name grew appearing in magazines, whispered in school hallways, shouted by announcers at tournaments, Malik never let go of what made him different. He didn't want fame. He wanted freedom. For himself, for others, for every kid who had ever been told they didn't belong. The day Malik turned 14, Ground Level didn't throw a party, they hosted a summit. Over 200 youth leaders from across the country gathered at the Eastwood Heights gym. Some flew in, others drove overnight. A few had never left their cities before, but all came with one purpose: to learn how to lead. Malik stood at the front of the room, wearing a simple gray t-shirt with the words built from below across the chest. He didn't have a microphone, didn't need one. When he spoke, the room leaned in. I'm not the smartest in this room, he began. I'm not the richest. I didn't even ask to be in this position, but I showed up. I listened, and I fought for a place to be myself. He paused, letting the silence carry the truth of his words. You don't have to wait to be grown, or famous, or powerful, to make change. You just have to give a damn and start where your feet are. The applause that followed wasn't lauded, was heavy like a wave of understanding that rolled over every listener. Workshops followed. Kids taught each other about conflict resolution, budgeting for rec centers, setting up mentorship chains, and organizing against discrimination. The adults in the room, educators, sponsors, and reporters, watched in awe, realizing this wasn't a youth summit. It was a movement. That night, Malik sat again in the bleachers, his feet dangling off the edge, watching the sunset turn the sky molten. The gym lights flickered on behind him, casting long shadows across the court. He didn't speak, he didn't need to, because Ground Level had grown into something too big for words, something alive, breathing in every corner of the country. And as the stars blinked awake above him, Malik understood something simple but powerful. He had been kicked out of a gym he coned, and now he was building courts no one could ever be kicked out of again. Months passed, and the chill of early spring rolled in with soft rains and budding trees. Malik's life had settled into a rhythm: school during the day, court in the afternoon, ground level meetings in the evening. But the more the foundation grew, the more Malik found himself pulled into spaces that felt less like home and more like tests. One Friday morning, Malik sat in a gleaming downtown conference room, surrounded by polished executives in tailored suits. The table was long, glass, and cold. His hoodie felt out of place, here navy blue with a small GL stitched on the chest. His backpack sat beside him, covered in patches and scuffed edges. He was 13, but at this moment, he might as well have been 40. The meeting was about potential expansion. A tech investor wanted to donate $5 million to Ground Level, but with suggestions. That word made Malik's stomach twist. We could build faster with fewer community votes, one man said. Young people don't always know what they need. Malik leaned forward, fingers clasped. They know better than anyone what they need. You just haven't been listening long enough. There was a pause, then an awkward chuckle. Of course. But scaling requires structure. Don't you agree? I agree, Malik said slowly. That structure without trust is just control with a friendly face. The investor's smile didn't reach his eyes. You're very well spoken for. Your age, Malik didn't flinch. And you're very polished for someone trying to buy influence. The silence that followed was the kind that rearranges a room. Malik didn't back down, not because he wanted to fight, but because he knew what was at stake. If he let this slide, Ground Level would become just another brand with a broken mission. He stood. If your donation depends on control, we'll have to pass. Cameron, who had stayed quiet until now, rose beside his son with pride in his chest. We're not building faster, we're building right. As they left the boardroom, Malik felt the weight of something bigger than business decisions. It was the weight of legacy, one he hadn't asked for, but now carried by choice. Outside, the air was crisp. The streets bustled below. Malik looked up at the skyline and whispered, "We'll do it our way," and he meant it. That evening, back at the gym, Malik returned to something far simpler than investor meetings. His crew. The same kids who used to race him up the stairs, tease him about missing free throws, and sneak extra slices of pizza after practice. They didn't care about suits or boardrooms. To them, Malik wasn't a CEO, he was Malik, just another brother. In sneakers and sweat, the court echoed with laughter, sneakers squeaking across hardwood and the rhythmic thud of basketballs. The familiar chaos felt like oxygen. Malik laced up his black and white Kyries, adjusted his headband, and called for a ball. "You gonna talk business or actually hoop today?" teased Rico, a stocky kid with endless energy and a busted jump. Shot Malik grinned. "Let's find out who really owns this court." The game erupted into fast-paced street ball. No refs, no rules, just respect. There was no better way to settle stress than this. Elbows flying, blocks shouted, trash talk. Dancing on every play. Here, Malik didn't have to be careful with his words. He could miss shots and still be loved. He could laugh until his stomach hurt. He could just be. After an hour, the game slowed. Sweat soaked through their clothes. Malik dropped to the floor. Lying flat with arms stretched out like he was making a snow angel on the gym floor, Rico dropped beside him. "You look dead. I feel reborn," Malik muttered with a tired grin. Around them, the court emptied, little by little, as kids went home. But a few stayed, sitting cross-legged in a circle, pulling out homework, energy bars, and phones. This was Ground Level after hours, not the business version, the heartbeat version. A girl named Nyla, who had joined the team after seeing Malik speak at a school event, sat beside him. She was smart, sharp-eyed, always reading people. "So what happened at that meeting?" "They wanted to buy us," Malik said simply. "And I told them no." She nodded, then offered half her protein bar. "Good, we're not for sale." He took it. Not now, not ever. Out there under the buzz of old gym lights and the smell of rubber soles and ambition, Malik realized something. The real power wasn't in who signed the checks. It was in the community that had his back whether he won or lost. These kids didn't care about PR headlines or LinkedIn posts. They cared about each other, and that was the root. That was Ground Level. It was a Saturday evening when Malik walked into the gym alone, long after the lights should have been out. The hardwood floor gleamed under the quiet overhead glow, and the empty silence held a peaceful kind of music. He walked to the center, placed the basketball down, sat cross-legged on the floor where it had all started. He closed his eyes and breathed it all in, not just the smell of sweat and leather, but the echoes of every insult turned into strength, every stare turned into respect, every locked door they had kicked wide open. The gym wasn't just a place anymore. It was a symbol of a world where ownership didn't mean just money or power. It meant belonging. He thought about the security guard who had once tried to push him out, and then about the crowd who had watched him rise. About the boy who made his first shot, the girl who found her voice, the teens who studied under these hoops like it was a second school. And then, his footsteps, Cameron walked in with 2 cups of hot cocoa. No words, Just a smile and one extended hand. Malik took the cup. "Thanks, Dad. You ready for what's next?" Cameron asked softly. Malik looked around at the gym, the city beyond it, and the fire inside himself that still burned was something bigger than revenge. I was born ready. Together, they stood in the middle of that court, father and son, 2 generations of vision, promise, and purpose. And above them, a banner unfurled freshly hung. It read, and that's how Malik's story ended. Not with revenge, but with reform. Not with anger, but with action. Not by proving who he was to the world, but by showing the world what everyone could become when given the chance. The end.